When the biggest broadcast of the year rolled out its most iconic ads, nobody expected a hidden message until a fleeting visual told a story far more meaningful than any slogan. Some messages aren't sold, they're revealed. Every year, the Super Bowl is more than just a game. It's an event, a spectacle, a cultural moment where families gather in living rooms, friends crowd into bars, and millions of strangers all tune into the same channel at the same time. For some, it's about the football, strategy, touchdowns, rivalries etched into history. For others, it's about the halftime show, dancers, fireworks, and pop stars pulling off performances that will be replayed for decades. And for many, it's about the ads. Super Bowl commercials are not mere promotions. They are mini-movies, cultural talking points, crafted with budgets big enough to rival Hollywood productions. A 30-second slot costs millions, and brands fight for those precious seconds to leave a mark on an audience of nearly 100 million. Funny, heartwarming, shocking, emotional, the ads are almost as anticipated as the final score. This year was no different. Across America, homes buzzed with anticipation. Wings fried in sizzling oil, pizza boxes stacked on coffee tables, bottles of soda and beer clinked together. Kids wore jerseys too big for them, parents shouted at the screen, and grandparents leaned back with nostalgic smiles. In one quiet living room, a man named David sat among friends. He wasn't the loudest in the room, nor the most invested in the game. He liked the Super Bowl as much as anyone else, but tonight his attention wasn't really on the touchdowns, it was on the commercial breaks. For David, this Super Bowl carried a secret, something no one else in the room, no one else in the world, fully knew yet. When the first quarter ended and the ads began, the room erupted in laughter at slap, stick gags and gasps at star-studded cameos. David smiled faintly, blending into the noise, but inside, his heart raced. He knew that somewhere in the sea of million-dollar commercials, a moment, just a flicker, would come. And when it did, it would carry a message only a handful of people would understand at first glance. It was his message. The game rolled on, the crowd outside roaring, the commentators booming with excitement. But David's gaze was fixed, unblinking, as each new commercial flashed on the screen. His friends joked, critiqued, and ranked the ads like amateur judges, but he remained silent, his pulse climbing with every passing second. Then it happened. The ad looked ordinary enough at first, a car brand showcasing sleek shots of vehicles gliding through city streets, neon lights, smiling actors, a catchy jingle, nothing out of the ordinary, until the camera panned past a street corner and paused for just a second too long. On a brick wall in the background, faded but visible, was a painted message. 3 words. Simple. Unassuming. But to David, and to the few who would notice, those words were everything. The ad carried on, ending with the company's logo and tagline. The room burst into chatter again. "That one was slick," someone said. "Too much CGI," another critiqued. No one mentioned the wall. No one noticed. But David exhaled slowly, his chest tight. The moment had passed. The message had slipped into the world, quietly, subtly, almost invisibly. Yet it was there, broadcast to millions. As the night went on, the game intensified, the halftime show dazzled, and more commercials came and went. But in the back of David's mind, one thought remained steady. It's out there now. Someone will see it. The Super Bowl had always been about spectacle, about shouting the loudest to grab attention. But tonight, hidden in plain sight, a whisper had been released into the noise. A whisper that, soon enough, would grow into something far louder than even the biggest ad of the night. The second quarter was underway, and most people in David's living room had shifted their attention back to the game. Wings were demolished, the salsa dip was running low, and arguments about defensive plays filled the air. But David sat quietly, his mind replaying what he'd just seen. The ad itself had been flashy but forgettable. Polished cars, neon reflections, a voiceover dripping with confidence. But it wasn't the cars David cared about. It was the wall, the brief pause, the 3 words that had slipped into millions of homes like a shadow. "Still with you." That was all. Painted in white across a faded brick wall, it looked like ordinary graffiti, the kind you'd expect in a cityscape ad, but it wasn't ordinary. David had placed it there deliberately, weeks before, when the production team scouted filming locations. He had worked quietly, weaving it into the background where it wouldn't seem out of place, a detail that most would dismiss. But for those who knew, it was unmistakable. The first hints appeared online within minutes. On Twitter, a user paused the commercial and zoomed in. "Did anyone else catch the writing on the wall? Looks like it said, 'Still with you.' What's that about?" At first, the replies were jokes, conspiracy theories, memes, guesses about new product slogans. But then someone else posted a freeze frame. And another. Threads began forming, people dissecting the scene, speculating wildly. Some thought it was an intentional teaser for a brand campaign. Others guessed it was a tribute, a secret message tucked in by the company. A few brushed it off as nothing. But somewhere, scattered across the country, people who knew David or knew of him sat up straighter. To them, those words weren't random, they carried weight. One old friend texted another, "Did you see that? During the car ad, that was David's phrase. He used to say it all the time." Another person whispered through tears, "That's him. That has to be him." The online chatter grew. Reddit lit up with speculation, threads dissecting the meaning. Some thought it was part of a clever marketing ploy. Brands loved their Easter eggs, but others felt the sincerity behind it, something raw and unpolished hidden in the gloss of a commercial. By halftime, "Still with you" was trending. David sat quietly on the couch, his friends none the wiser. They laughed at memes, argued about the best ads so far, and joked about which celebrity cameo had landed best. No one in the room knew that David's heart was pounding with every tweet, every post, every screenshot of the wall. He had done it. The message was out. It wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. Because the people it was meant for, the ones who had shared pieces of his journey, the ones who knew the meaning of those 3 words, would recognize it. They would feel it. They would know. Somewhere across the country, his sister saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. She grabbed her phone, replayed the ad, froze the frame, and covered her mouth with trembling hands. She didn't care about the car. She only saw the wall. The message. Him. By the end of the night, thousands were talking. Some dismissed it, some laughed, but many began to wonder, why would anyone slip those words into an ad? What story lay beneath? The Super Bowl is built on noise, explosions of color, sound, and spectacle, but in that chaos, a single whisper had cut through. "Still with you." And though most didn't yet know the meaning, those 3 words had already started to ripple outward, carrying a legacy that was about to surface in ways no one expected. By the time the halftime show had ended, the stadium was roaring, fireworks bursting, and millions of viewers buzzing about the performance. But online, something else was catching fire. It started small, an isolated observation, a handful of screenshots. A few eagle-eyed viewers had paused the car commercial, circled the graffiti-like words on the wall, and asked, "Did anyone else notice this?" But in the digital age, curiosity spreads like wildfire. By the time the players jogged back onto the field for the 3rd quarter, Twitter was ablaze. "Still with you." Was that part of the ad? Or something snuck in? One post read. "This doesn't feel like branding. This feels personal," another wrote. Within hours, Reddit threads ballooned with speculation. Some fans insisted it was part of a clever campaign strategy, a hidden message to get people talking about the car brand. Others argued that no company would risk paying millions for seconds of airtime only to hide a cryptic phrase unrelated to their product. YouTube creators were already uploading frame-by-frame breakdowns of the commercial. One video titled, "What Did That Super Bowl Ad Really Say?" racked up tens of thousands of views overnight. The creator zoomed in on the graffiti, froze the frame, and repeated it like gospel. "Still with you." Conspiracy theories blossomed. Some swore it was a teaser for a new movie. Others believed it was a tribute to a celebrity who had recently passed away. A few dug through the archives, searching for connections, song lyrics, old ad campaigns, even hidden codes. But amid all the noise, those who knew David, or who had heard whispers of his story, began to speak, quietly at first, then louder. "That was his phrase," one comment read. "He used to write it at the end of every letter." "I knew him in college," another shared. He always signed his notes like that. Still wit. It's you. I can't believe he did this. The speculation shifted. Theories about marketing stunts gave way to something deeper, something more human. People began to piece together the truth. This wasn't a corporate ploy. This was a person's voice, slipped into the noise of the biggest stage in America. By the next morning, mainstream media had picked it up. Headlines ran across digital front pages. Mystery message. In Super Bowl, ad leaves viewers buzzing. Still with you. Not a brand slogan, but something deeper? The internet thinks so. The human story, hidden in America's most expensive ads. TV hosts debated it on morning shows, their voices full of curiosity. Was it an intentional Easter egg? A mistake that slipped through editing? Or was it, as more and more suspected, a hidden message with a purpose no company could manufacture? And through it all, social media exploded with emotion. Some people joked about missing it completely, kicking themselves for looking away during the 1 second it appeared. Others shared personal interpretations. I don't know who wrote it, but those words hit me. I feel like I needed to hear them. Hashtags surged. Still with. You trended globally, attached to stories of grief, love, resilience. People began to use it in their own contexts, posting photos of lost loved ones, personal struggles, even victories. In a way, the message had grown beyond its origin. It was no longer just David's, it belonged to everyone who found meaning in it. David sat in silence as he scrolled through his phone. He saw the screenshots, the debates, the tears, the laughter. His friends still had no idea, but strangers across the world were beginning to carry his words like a banner. He had whispered into the noise of the Super Bowl. And now, the world was whispering back. The message was spreading faster than he ever imagined. But with the attention questions. Questions about who had placed it there and why. And soon, someone would dig deep enough to uncover the truth. The whisper was about to become a voice. By Monday morning, journalists were circling like hawks. The Super Bowl wasn't just the biggest sporting event in America, it was a treasure trove of stories. Usually those stories focused on game-changing plays or record-breaking ad budgets, but this year, one thread eclipsed the rest. 3 words on a brick wall. Still with you. Newsrooms debated how to cover it. Some editors thought it was a harmless Easter egg, others sensed something more, and in the middle of this frenzy was a reporter named Clara Ramirez. Clara wasn't the type to chase easy headlines. She specialized in human interest stories, the kind that revealed the quiet truths beneath loud events. When she first saw the viral freeze frame of the ad, she was skeptical, but the more she read, the more intrigued she became. Something about the sincerity of the phrase, the way people latched onto it, told her there was more here than marketing. So, she started digging. The production company behind the car commercial stonewalled at first. "We don't discuss creative details," their spokesperson said. Everything in the ad was approved by the client. But when Clara pressed harder, she noticed their hesitation. They didn't deny the phrase was there, they just didn't explain it. Finally, a source, an anonymous editor who had worked on the footage, reached out to her. "It wasn't in the script," he whispered over the phone. "We didn't plan it. It was already on the wall when we shot. We thought it looked natural, so we left it in." That was all Clara needed. She traced the filming location to a quiet street in Chicago where the ad's glossy city scenes had been captured weeks earlier. When she arrived, she found the wall exactly as it had appeared on TV. Weathered brick, faded graffiti, and those 3 words painted carefully in white. But this wasn't the messy scrawl of a vandal. The letters were neat, délicat, berate. Someone had placed them with purpose. Clara asked around the neighborhood, showing a photo of the wall. Most shrugged, but one older man, the owner of a nearby corner store, leaned closer. "Oh, that? Yeah, I've seen him. Tall guy, quiet, used to come by late at night with a bag of paint. Always wrote the same thing. Still with you." Her pulse quickened. "Do you know his name?" The man scratched his chin. "David, I think. He bought coffee here sometimes. Nice fella. Didn't talk much, but he seemed tired, you know? Like he was carrying something heavy." It was the lead she needed. Back at her desk, Clara dug through public records, cross-referencing local art groups and community projects. Slowly, a picture emerged. David Thompson, mid-30s, graphic designer, once active in community murals. Friends described him as thoughtful, kind, the type of man who remembered birthdays and stayed late to help clean up. But in recent years, his life had been marked by loss. A younger brother gone too soon, a long-term relationship fractured under the weight of grief, health problems that lingered like shadows. Through it all, he had left small messages around the city, on alley walls, under bridges, in places only those who looked closely would see. Always the same phrase. Still with you. For him, it was more than words. It was a promise, a way of telling those he had lost, and those who still carried him, that even when life stripped everything else away, presence endured. When Clara pieced this together, she realized the truth. David hadn't stumbled into the Super Bowl by accident. He had embedded his message on a wall he knew would be filmed, trusting the noise of the biggest broadcast in America to carry his whisper further than he ever could alone. By the time her article went live, the man behind the Super Bowl's hidden message, readers were already searching for more. David's story spread alongside the hashtag, and suddenly the words weren't just viral curiosity, they were a legacy. By Tuesday morning, the phrase had leapt from internet curiosity to a national conversation. Clara's article about David lit a spark that caught everywhere, on talk shows, podcasts, and even morning news programs that usually reserved their airtime for sports highlights and celebrity gossip. The narrative had shifted. It was no longer just what did those words mean. Now it was, who was the man who dared to place them in front of 100 million people? David's story resonated. People were drawn not only to the mystery of how he had done it, but to the reason behind it. They learned of his struggles, his losses, the way he had turned his grief into a quiet promise, still with you. That phrase was no longer confined to a brick wall in Chicago or a split second of a car commercial. It was becoming a mantra. By midweek, the hashtag #StillWithYou was everywhere. People used it to honor family members who had passed, to support friends fighting illness, to encourage strangers online. It became shorthand for solidarity, for resilience, for presence, even in absence. But not everyone welcomed it. Executives at the car company were furious at first. They worried the message would overshadow their multi-million-dollar campaign. "We paid for cars, not for someone's graffiti," one anonymous executive ranted in a leaked email, but the public backlash silenced them quickly. Customers praised the ad precisely because of the hidden message. Sales inquiries went up. Their brand name was tied to humanity, sincerity, and heart. Ironically, the unapproved message became the most effective marketing they'd ever had. Regulators also weighed in. Questions arose. Had David violated advertising laws? Had the message been planted without proper clearance? But the truth was murkier. The production crew had chosen the location, the company had approved the final cut, and technically, nothing in the ad was illegal. It was simply human. Meanwhile, David himself stayed silent. He didn't issue statements or interviews. Friends said he was overwhelmed by the attention, retreating into the quiet corners of the city he loved. But his silence only deepened the intrigue. Communities began taking ownership of his phrase. Street artists painted "Still With You" across murals from New York to Los Angeles. Schools used it in assemblies to talk about kindness and resilience. Therapists quoted it to grieving families. It appeared on handmade signs at vigils, on T-shirts, even on bracelets sold to raise money for charity. What had begun as one man's private promise had become a collective anthem, and with it came debate. Some called David a genius, an artist who had hijacked the noisiest event in America to deliver a whisper that mattered. Others accused him of exploiting grief for attention. If he wanted to send a message, why not just post it online? Critics argued, but supporters countered, that's the point. In a world drowning in noise, he found a way to make the world pause. Even politicians weighed in. One senator tweeted the phrase with a story about his late father. Another condemned it as irresponsible meddling in corporate broadcast. The phrase became politicized, debated, stretched beyond what David had ever intended. Yet through it all, the core remained untouched. For the millions who saw it, whether live during the game or later in a viral clip, those three words hit something universal. Everyone had someone they'd lost. Everyone had moments when they needed to hear or say that they weren't alone. Still With You had become more than graffiti, more than a hidden message. It was now a movement. And though David hadn't sought fame or recognition, his quiet rebellion against the noise of the world had done something no ad, no speech, no spect, Akel could achieve. It had made people feel connected.